And welcome to WHAS11 News here at 5. We've got some flash flood warnings out there, and we want to get straight over to Chief Meteorologist Mallory Schnell to let us know what's happening. A lot of lightning out there too, Mallory.
Ooh, hey there, Connie. Yes, these storms are certainly coming down all across Kentucky, and especially right along the I-64 corridor and just along the north and southern edges of that. We're taking a live look to our UVL health camera in Scottsburg. The rain certainly coming down there. Elsewhere, dark skies all across Louisville as we are basically in between two of these rounds of strong storms here. The first one marching off to the east, the second one close behind approaching Corydon as we speak. We have currently two flash flood warnings that are crawling across your screen there on the bottom here. We have one for Henryville, Charlestown, Sellersburg down to Prospect. This is in 7:45, and then this additional one from Anchorage up through Henry County takes us until 6 o'clock this evening. So some spots have already picked up 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rainfall. You can tell with all of the red on the radar here, and there's more rain to come that will fall over much of the same area. As Connie mentioned, a lot of lightning too. Take a look at this from Hardinsburg up through Corydon here. So that's going to be headed in Louisville's direction within the hour, it looks like. We do have a flood watch in place for all of the highlighted areas here until midnight. Once again, I'm expecting more in the way of flood advisories and flash flood warnings just because there's so much moisture for these storms to tap into, and they're training or moving over the same area basically from west to east here. So expect more widespread storms, heavy at times, strong at times through about sunset. We'll get a bit of a break overnight before additional storms want to roll in here tomorrow morning. We'll be talking more about that forecast coming up in just a bit.
All right, Mallory, thank you so much. No prison time for convicted former Louisville police officer Brett Hankesen in the Breonna Taylor case. That's the recommendation from the U.S. Department of Justice, which has seen a major shift now in priorities under the Trump administration. Instead, the DOJ is pushing 3 years of supervised release. In November, a federal jury found Brett Hankesen guilty of violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights. They determined he used excessive force when he fired 10 shots into the side of her apartment. That was the night of the deadly 2020 police raid, but none of Hankesen's bullets hit Taylor. The first time federal prosecutors tried Hankesen, it ended in a mistrial. And that night in 2020, next door, 3 neighbors were home, including a pregnant woman. Hankesen's shots went through their apartment, but he was found not guilty of violating their rights. Hankesen was also acquitted of his state charges back in 2022. Well, Isaiah Kim Martinez and senior photojournalist Alyssa Newton have been following all of this for us. And so, Isaiah, you covered that guilty verdict last year. So what does this mean now that the DOJ is getting involved in all this?
Well, Connie, it's certainly a unique situation, right? Normally in these situations, the prosecutors, they ask for more prison time. The defense asks for leniency, and then the judge makes the final call. But under the Trump administration and this new look DOJ, Hankesen's attorneys are essentially on the same page with them.
Mr. Hankesen, do you have any comment to this?
Brett Hankesen, the only former Louisville police officer convicted in the Breonna Taylor case, may not face any time in prison. That's if the new look Department of Justice under President Donald Trump gets what it's asking for. Can you explain to me your reaction to hearing the DOJ saying we only want supervised release?
Well, I think it's not surprising because we know the history of America. You know, justice really means the black community, just us.
Lamont Collins, head of the Roots 101 African American Museum in downtown Louisville, speaks to me from their Breonna Taylor exhibit.
It was done in 6 years ago.
He says the possibility of Hankesen not going behind bars is unexplainable. In November, a federal jury found the former cop guilty of using excessive force when he fired 10 times into the side of Taylor's apartment.
I think what we see in America, the changing of the guards, the changing of the president, the changing of the Congress, the things that people want power, but not necessarily power with justice, just power. And power can be corrupt.
In a new memo filed this week, DOJ attorneys with the Civil Rights Division only recommended 3 years supervised release, a far cry from the several years the government was expected to push for. John Mattingly, the retired LMPD sergeant who was shot in the leg by Taylor's boyfriend that night, calls this development refreshing for the city and law enforcement.
We saw this back when they first started, when they dropped all the lawsuits against cities for the consent decrees, including Louisville. So you knew we were moving in the right direction as far as at least trying on the right path back to common sense. You even saw a line in there that basically said the process is the punishment. And so I think, you know, Brett's been through hell and back.
And so, Isaiah, the mayor is apparently weighing in on this too?
Well, Connie is. We're going to read a direct statement here. Mayor Craig Greenberg writes, quote, former officer Brett Hankesen was convicted of a serious federal crime. What you're seeing on your screen is not the mayor's quote there. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
Again, the mayor says former officer Brett Hankesen was convicted of a serious federal crime. He says, I believe his actions warrant a serious prison sentence. Connie.
All right. Isaiah, thank you so much for that report. We appreciate it. And Councilwoman Shamika Parrish Wright released this statement saying Breonna Taylor's rights were violated in an intimate and terrifying way, saying, quote, one day in prison for a lifetime of moments Breonna Taylor's family will never share with her is a devastating slap in the face. Brett Hankesen was not acting alone the night Breonna was killed. His actions and those of others led not only to the loss of Breonna's life, but to the permanent emotional and psychological harm inflicted on Kenneth Walker, end quote. And let's take a quick refresher on how we got here. Officers served that warrant at Breonna Taylor's apartment back on March 13th of 2020. Since that night, federal investigators have found that search warrant used falsified information. Protests started in downtown Louisville calling for police accountability later that same month. Brett Hankesen was the first officer fired in the case in June of 2020. And last year, Police Chief Paul Humphrey said that night in 2020, the officers on scene were in the wrong.
I'll tell you exactly what I told the officers is that I wouldn't expect any of them to behave the way that that detective did that day. Plain and simple. It's unacceptable. Whether or not he was indicted by a grand jury, whether or not he was charged, whether or not he was found guilty, doesn't matter to me. That's not the behavior that's acceptable. It's not okay.
Hankesen also faced state charges of wanton endangerment. A jury found him not guilty. And John Mattingly is retired now and wrote a book describing that night when he was shot in the leg. Miles Cosgrove, who fired the shot that killed Breonna Taylor, was fired from LMPD and is now a sheriff's deputy in Carroll County. Joshua Janes and Kyle Meany are accused of depriving Taylor of her rights. Janes is facing 2 additional charges of conspiracy and falsification of records for allegedly lying on the search warrant. Those cases are still working their way through the courts. Well, Misty Null believes the judge in her criminal case is not fair. Judge Larry Medlock accepted Misty Null's 6-year plea deal earlier this month, but then threatened to cancel it days later because of comments she made in an interview. Focus reporter Travis Breeze tells us where the case stands.
Misty Null says there's no way a judge can throw out a guilty plea after it has already been accepted. She and her attorney Bart McMahon made a series of motions on Wednesday saying the judge has been biased against the Null family for over a year. Judge Larry Medlock threatened to throw out Misty's plea deal on July 7th because of comments she made to another TV station in an interview that aired on July 3rd, just minutes after she pleaded guilty in court. The plea deal was for 1.5 years behind bars and 4.5 on probation. The judge said Misty professed to maintain her innocence in that interview, which he thought contradicted her plea agreement. In a new filing Wednesday, Misty and her attorney said the theme of that interview was one of accountability and responsibility, also pointing out she was not under oath and saying once the judge accepted her plea deal, he had no authority to revoke it. Misty also asked for a new judge, referencing the judge's demonstrative gavel swing against her estranged husband, Jamie, on April 9th, 2024.
Today is that day.
She also cited Medlock's behavior at the Derby Day car auction, exclusively covered by WHAS11. Freegee and Freegee auctioneers brought him up on stage to help sell one of Null's Superbirds, where he recreated the gavel slam.
Sell, 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 sell!
And then he said, the auction company told me that day the theatrics were meant to garner the highest bid. Misty said she worries Judge Medlock cannot be impartial because he showed, quote, palpable pleasure at the car auction. An attorney involved in the case confirmed Judge Medlock will be the one to decide on all of these motions. I emailed the judge today asking if he had any comment. He has not responded. Travis Breeze, WHAS 11 on your side.
And Misty Null also asked that after her prison time is completed, her parole be monitored in Clark County, not Washington County, which is Judge Medlock's county. It's not clear if the judge will rule in a written order or in person August 12th. And there's one confirmed case of measles in Louisville. Louisville's health department says the virus is highly contagious and spreads through the air. The department says it's the county's first case in 14 years. Doctors are hoping it's isolated, but are reminding parents to check vaccination records to stop that spread. Alexandra Goldberg and photojournalist Jessica Farley have the doctor's call to action.
Fears of measles spreading in Louisville.
This close to home.
But Natasha Cheek knows she's done everything to protect her children.
Didn't worry about it too much since the kids are vaccinated, but it is scary knowing that people are walking around that's not vaccinated that could easily catch it.
There's been one reported case of measles in Jefferson County, and top of mind for doctors is making sure they get it under control ahead of the school year.
Measles is certainly something we don't want to be dealing with because it's an incredibly infectious illness that can cause a lot of problems. And so definitely did not want to hear that it's arrived here in Louisville.
Eva Stone, the health services manager for Jefferson County Public Schools, is pleading with families to get vaccinated to stop the spread. She said just over 90% of the district is vaccinated, but a state of herd immunity is 95%.
90% is not enough. We have about 9,000 kids in the district that we don't have record of having that measles, mumps, rubella vaccine.
A Jefferson County child was confirmed positive for measles on July 15th after traveling internationally, according to the city. The Metro's health department says they went to the Little Clinic at Kroger on Dixie Highway just days before on July 9th.
Whenever there is a single case of measles in a community, there is a risk for an outbreak. But a lot of work is happening to try to prevent an outbreak.
Dr. Christina Bryant believes this is an isolated case, but the best way to protect yourself is by getting vaccinated.
The good news is that 2 doses of measles vaccination are very effective at preventing measles.
The CDC says the full dosage is 97% effective against measles. So its message is clear. Get poked so you can play.
You're either going to be locked in at home with bored kids or you can have fun.
And ensure the new school year is a healthy one. In Louisville, Alexandra Goldberg, WHAS11 on your side.
And JCPS is offering free vaccinations. Visit the JCPS website or call 502-485-3387 for more information.
3, 2, 1.
Well, with that, a historic college is getting new life after being closed for 8 years. The Bogard College of Art and Music was the first fine arts school for African-American students here in Louisville in the early 20th century. But it closed back in 2017. Louisville Metro government announced a grant to fix up the building in 2021 so it could once again be a valuable community asset. It will continue its original purpose of creating art and music spaces for kids.
And it became a sanctuary, a place to imagine a future bigger than what the country and our city was offering at the time. After the college closed in 2017, the building sat vacant with an uncertain future. But the urgency to save it was clear. This was not about just preserving the bricks and mortars of this building, but it was about protecting our history, our memories, and preserving the possibility for future generations.
And West Louisville Performing Arts Academy will set up studio space for vocal and instrument classes, plus space for kids to store their instruments.